Now, before I get started, I've got to confess, we are going to be testing the technology tonight because I am on day 4 of a 14-day isolation period, all because I went to Queensland last weekend, which the government, remember, told us to take holidays around the country. But I should have known better. I'm the first to admit that, because our pathetic premiers, they hide behind the health bureaucrats and they shut down borders or entire communities on a whim.
We know how transmissible this variant of the virus is. Anybody who leaves the house, assume that you have the virus or that people you come into contact with have the virus and act accordingly.
We will be banning singing for the next 12 weeks.
But we are still in a dangerous period. The territory is still under threat.
Will be enough to crush and kill the virus in its tracks.
Now, the crazy thing is the Queenslanders have been released from their lockdown, but those who actually visited, like me here in South Australia, were still shut up for another 6 or 7 days. It's absolutely crazy. But of course, the health experts repeatedly demonstrate that while they've got degrees in medicine, they actually haven't graduated from the School of Common Sense. And I say it's noteworthy that they've been given a pretty free run by much of the media, despite the repeated contradictions that they always are peddling about the pandemic. For example, after telling us that AstraZeneca vaccine was safe, we're now told it might be, or maybe it's not. And after telling us that young people are at risk, which is why they closed the schools, remember, the Queensland health officer, she says they aren't really.
No, I do not want under 40s to get AstraZeneca.
Why?
Because they are at increased risk of getting the rare, it is rare, but they're at increased risk of getting that rare clotting syndrome. We've seen up to 49 deaths in the UK from that syndrome. I don't want an 18-year-old in Queensland dying from a clotting illness who, if they got COVID, probably wouldn't die.
And here in South Australia, well, the toasted Premier Marshmallow, he locked down the entire state for a non-existent pizza box strain of COVID last year. And we're told that while going to the footy with 30,000 other people is okay, actually touching a footy handled by a sweaty Victorian is a risk. Here's Professor Patches O'Houlihan Spurrier telling us about the rules of pandemic dodgeball.
If you are at Adelaide Oval and the ball comes towards you, my advice to you is to duck and just do not touch that ball.
Well, this week, Sky News' own Chris Kenny was the only journalist to ask some pointed questions of Premier Marshmallow and Professor Patches. Neither of them could provide a straight answer to even the most basic of questions.
Excuse me, I am here to provide information to the South Australian public, not to have an argument with you over a minor point. Thank you.
Minor point. The level at which we get country vaccination and reduce the alarm is not a minor point. Is 80% an unrealistically high level to reduce the threats of lockdowns and restrictions in this country?
Thank you, Harvey.
Can I please ask about home?
Now, I have to tell you, the hopelessness of this duo's administration was really brought home to me after my return from Queensland on Monday. You see, after going through processing and being advised of my isolation period, a few hours after arriving at Adelaide Airport, I received an email from South Australian authorities saying that my entry into the state in which I live and was already in had actually been denied. Now, I've got to tell you that again. After I'd been through the South Australian registration process and was already in the state, I was told I couldn't come in. It's just another example of how hopeless they are, and it's likely not much different around the rest of the country. We, you and me, we're being treated like mushrooms. We're kept in the dark, fed a pile of manure by these weak leaders and their human political shields. Almost everything we've been told about this virus has been contradicted or exposed as questionable. Right from the origins, which we now know is likely in a Wuhan lab, even though they've denied that forever, to the dangers of the virus, the stacked death statistics. The original intent, remember, that was to flatten the curve, and now it's elimination. The efficacy of mask wearing, sometimes they're mandated, sometimes they're not, sometimes they are and they're not in the same press release. And of course, there's lockdowns, the myriad strains, they keep coming up with new ones all the time, the vaccinations, the questions over that, and this whole thing about what is the new normal. We've had government cover-ups of failed quarantine, dodgy security contracts, and administrative failure after administrative failure. It's been a litany of self-serving garbage. And I've got to tell you, I am tired of it. How can any of us have confidence in the very people who have been repeatedly misleading us under the guise of their expertise? If what they told us in the past was wrong, why should we believe what they tell us now?